Tonight, I'm not allowed to enjoy the pot roast. Instead, I'm offered a questionable soup and salad that have been sitting in the fridge for 3 days. There's a chance they might have gone bad, but I'm told I should eat them to avoid waste. Don't waste good food on yourself when I can eat, my mother-in-law remarks, implying that leftovers are perfectly suitable for me. As if that weren't enough, she constantly hurls unpleasant comments my way, making my meals feel like a punishment. My name is Janice, and at 29, I find myself juggling the demands of work and home life. I married just last year, and now my husband and I live with his family. While I wasn't particularly enthusiastic about this arrangement, my husband, being the eldest son, felt a strong sense of duty to stay close to home after his father's passing. He insists on caring for his lively mother, though I struggle to grasp his concerns given her energetic spirit. With my brother-in-law working overseas, it seemed like the only viable option. Initially, the idea of living with my in-laws felt outdated, but my husband and his mother embrace traditional values. Unfortunately, this situation has become increasingly challenging for me. Lately, my husband has adopted his mother's harsh attitude towards me, a stark departure from how he acted before we married. His demeanor has changed dramatically. He now addresses me with a condescension that leaves me feeling belittled, often raising his voice and causing me significant distress. Just recently, he snapped at me about the way I ironed his shirt. Why is my shirt so wrinkled? I'll be embarrassed at work like this. Can't you even iron properly? When I tried to defend myself, insisting I had done my best, he dismissed me with a scathing retort, "Your best isn't good enough. You need to realize what a useless wife you are." His words cut deep. "That's so cruel. You don't have to talk to me like that," I replied, but he only escalated his insults, comparing my face to the wrinkled shirt and saying I looked older than my age, claiming it was a turn-off. This relentless criticism from both him and my mother-in-law makes every day a battle, leaving me feeling isolated and misunderstood in what should be my new home. Before we married, he used to call me adorable and treated me like a princess. Now, however, his demeanor has shifted drastically. He not only mocks my parents but also laughs about it afterward, which I find utterly baffling and hurtful. I sometimes can't help but think how ironic it is that he's losing hair for someone his age, and I secretly wish he would just go bald. Our marriage is still fresh, yet I find myself worried about our future. At times, the thought of divorce even crosses my mind. After a grueling day at work, I arrive home only to be greeted by an overwhelming pile of chores. I'm utterly exhausted. Yet my mother-in-law, who spends her days glued to the television, never lifts a finger to help. It's infuriating to constantly find crumbs from her snacks strewn across the floor, which I inevitably have to clean up, especially when she can't even be bothered to use a plate. One evening after dinner, she suddenly suggested, "Let's all go to a spa resort for the new year." Although the thought of spending more time with them didn't excite me, the idea of the spa resort did intrigue me. I love spa retreats, and this particular one had been featured on TV recently, making it sound especially enticing. I hoped I could overlook their annoying habits and turn this trip into a pleasant memory. As I internally nursed some excitement about the getaway, my mother-in-law quickly shifted the conversation. "You know we only have a small car, right? I was hoping we could borrow your family's minivan. It has enough space for all the luggage." My father usually drives a compact car, but he uses the minivan for shopping trips or his camping adventures. Reluctantly, I agreed, thinking it might simplify our upcoming family vacation. When I called my father to ask about borrowing the minivan for our New Year's trip, he agreed without hesitation. This kind gesture added a silver lining to my preparations for our year-end getaway. Despite the usual chaos of cleaning the house, the prospect of finally unwinding at a spa resort after such a challenging year kept me motivated. As expected, my mother-in-law remained seated on the sofa like a statue, contributing nothing to the preparations. Then, on New Year's Day, I woke up to a jarring realization: I had overslept. I glanced at the alarm clock, which read 7:50 a.m. To my astonishment, Wayne wasn't beside me, nor was he anywhere in the house. Confused, I began searching for him and my mother-in-law, but they were nowhere to be found. Feeling a rising sense of panic, I checked my smartphone for any clues. Normally, I'd leave it charging in the living room overnight, and that's where I found a text notification meant for my mother-in-law: "We're going to have fun without you. We never booked a place for you. Spend a lonely New Year. It's okay if the bride doesn't come." It was evident then that they had never intended for me to join them on their holiday outing, choosing instead to revel in the trip without me. A mix of sadness and anger washed over me, especially with the nagging suspicion that they had orchestrated the situation by turning off my alarm and encouraging me to drink heavily the night before, likely to ensure I would oversleep. Thankfully, there was no actual drugging, but the intention to impair my ability to wake up felt almost as violating. Though I was furious and hurt, I realized that allowing my anger to consume me wouldn't change the reality of the situation. I resolved to make the best of my day alone at home, even though a part of me longed for the comfort of my parents' house. Unfortunately, my parents were away on a trip, so I couldn't join them. Instead, I ordered a pizza and spent the day by myself. When my mother-in-law and husband returned from their vacation, they were all smiles, boasting about the fun they had and how they'd love to visit the spa resort again, explicitly without me. To add insult to injury, they handed me a souvenir, a random stone they'd found, claiming it suited me perfectly. It was clear that my mother-in-law's spite knew no bounds. Feeling utterly frustrated, I drove the minivan back to my parents' house, hoping they had returned by now. When I arrived, my father greeted me with expectations of hearing tales about the famous spa. I explained that I hadn't gone because, according to my mother-in-law, it was perfectly fine for the bride to stay behind. I had been deliberately left out. Waking to an empty house, shocked and confused, my father asked for clarification. Upon hearing the full story, his calm demeanor shifted, and he became visibly upset, a rare sight for him. Without saying much more, my father had me sit in the passenger seat of the minivan, and we headed back to my in-laws' house. As we arrived, my father stormed into the house, holding something firmly in his hand. My mother-in-law sauntered in casually, wishing us a happy new year and thanking us for the use of the minivan. With a smirk that only confirmed her deceit, she spun a blatant lie, claiming I had a fever and couldn't join them. She even said she had offered to stay behind to care for me. The audacity of her fabrication baffled me. I wasn't ill at all. How could she concoct such a blatant lie? My father quickly pointed out that I had been intentionally left behind. "Did you really send a text saying it was okay for the bride not to come?" my father demanded. "I don't remember doing that," my mother-in-law deflected, her expression unreadable. "You did. Look at these messages," I interjected, showing her the texts. Despite being caught red-handed, she continued to feign innocence. Her ability to deny the facts, even when cornered, was astonishing, a twisted performance that left me in disbelief. "You're a sad person," my father remarked, shaking his head in disappointment. Then, shifting gears, he asked her, "By the way, can I charge you for the cleaning of the car's interior?" "Why would you do that?" she retorted, a hint of confusion creeping into her voice. "Because you dirted it, and with a married man, no less." "What a disgraceful scene," he accused. "What are you talking about?" she demanded, her brows furrowing in irritation. He held up the dash cam he had brought with him. "This right here," he explained. "This camera records both outside and inside the car. It's useful for proving you were driving safely, but it seems you didn't know it could record the interior as well." My mother-in-law, clearly unfamiliar with car gadgets, hadn't realized the dash cam's dual capabilities. The footage my father played back showed her in a compromising position with an unknown man. Considering my father-in-law had passed away, her actions were not only inappropriate but also deeply disrespectful. The shock of witnessing such behavior weighed heavily on us, shattering any semblance of respect we might have still held for her. "What on earth were you doing in the family car? This was the same day you borrowed it. How appalling!" My father confronted her, his voice steady as the dashcam footage played on. My mother-in-law's expression shifted to panic as she fumbled over her words, her eyes welling with tears, clearly on the verge of breaking down. Part of me found some amusement in her discomfort, though I knew it might be cruel to feel this way. Yet, after all the torment she had put me through, it felt like she was finally getting a taste of her own medicine. Sympathy eluded me as she scrambled to explain herself. Her excuses were disjointed and desperate, betraying her flustered state. Suddenly, my father pulled a photograph from his pocket. It showed my mother-in-law with the same man from the video, engaged in an inappropriate act in broad daylight in a secluded yet public setting. The audacity of her actions, especially during the day, was shocking. "Why would you have such a picture unless you meant to harm me?" she challenged, her bravado wavering under the weight of her predicament. My father, "Remember, I'm a detective," he replied coolly. "Does that jog your memory? I've been telling you this all along." It turned out that the wife of the man seen with my mother-in-law had hired him for an infidelity investigation. He was shocked to discover my mother-in-law as the other woman. "I was going to inform her next week," my father disclosed. And suddenly, the pieces fell into place, revealing why he had such damning evidence. This revelation marked a turning point, exposing my mother-in-law's deceit not just to our family but potentially to others as well. "I hadn't planned to reveal this so soon," my father continued, holding the photograph. Caught off guard, my mother-in-law immediately protested her innocence. "No, I was put in a bad situation against my will. Please don't tell his wife," she pleaded, desperation lacing her voice. "But it seems you were enjoying yourself," my father retorted. "We also have video footage of you whispering sweet nothings to this man. Would you like to see that too?" Overwhelmed by the mounting evidence, my mother-in-law collapsed to her knees, sobbing. I watched her break down, my gaze cold and detached. Amid this tense moment, my husband walked in, and my patience with him had already evaporated. I declared my intention right then and there. "I've had enough. I want a divorce. I can't stay in this dysfunctional family any longer." "What? But what about our living expenses if you leave?" he asked in a panic. "I was fired a while ago," he confessed, dropping another bombshell. Despite knowing he had lost his job at the end of the year, he had still chosen to go on that lavish spa resort trip, a decision that now seemed utterly foolish to me. Hearing this, I felt I had no choice but to leave him. I removed my wedding ring, placing it on the table, and headed for the door. He tried to stop me, pleading, "Can't you forgive me for not taking you on the spa trip?" "It's not just about the trip," I replied sharply. "I don't want to be with you or your mother anymore. If you want to live with her that much, then go ahead. You mama's boy." As he begged me to wait, I contacted a lawyer and began the divorce process. My ex-husband now seems to be struggling to manage his finances, considering he was fired from his last job for theft. Finding new employment will likely be a challenge for him. My ex-husband was caught stealing at work, leading to his dismissal. His employers simply couldn't trust someone with such integrity issues. Unsurprisingly, this marked the beginning of a series of unfortunate events for him and his mother. Additionally, the wife of my mother-in-law's lover demanded compensation for the affair, forcing them to use all the savings left by my father-in-law to settle the claim. Since then, I haven't seen either my ex-husband or my former mother-in-law. While I can only imagine they must be experiencing difficult times, frankly, their situation no longer concerns me. Nowadays, I live alone and truly enjoy my work. Reflecting on everything, I'm relieved I made the decision not to start a family with my ex-husband. I now lead a peaceful life and am open to the possibility of finding new love should the right opportunity arise. I'm determined to choose wisely this time, ensuring my next relationship is built on trust and genuine affection. This is my plan and my commitment to myself, to make more prudent choices for a happier future.